My husband used his pest control business to prey on teenage boys, so I showed everyone what kind of pest he really was. Dave was every parent's hero, hiring their teenage sons and sponsoring every little league team in town. Mothers gushed at barbecues about what a mentor he was while I smiled and played the perfect wife. And for 15 years, I thought I had the perfect marriage until I saw the text that changed everything. Dave left his phone charging on our nightstand and a message preview lit up the screen. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Same place as always. My chest tightened as I grabbed his phone, typing in the passcode I'd known for years. The contact just said J, but the messages made my hands shake. Months of texts about meeting at empty houses, about keeping things quiet, about how good it felt to finally have someone who understood. My husband was having an affair. I scrolled through their conversations, finding things that made me sick. Dave had sent explicit photos of himself with messages like, thinking of you, and for your eyes only. Jay responded with fire emojis and, you're so hot, and can't wait to see you Thursday. There were cash withdrawals every week, hotel charges, and texts about meeting at empty houses. One message from Jay said, thanks for today. The money really helps with college. So some young gold digger was bleeding my husband dry while I played the fool at home, but my blood went hot when I read Dave's message from last week. My wife is at her sister's this weekend. Come over. They'd been in my house, in my bed, like I was the one sleeping in someone else's sheets. I didn't cry or scream. Instead, I went to bed that night planning while Dave snored beside me, unaware his perfect life was about to crumble. The next morning, I kissed him goodbye and watched him leave for a big commercial job across town. Then I called Stan from the rival pest control company, the one who'd been losing contracts to Dave for years. We met at a coffee shop where I explained that Dave was having an affair and I wanted revenge. I need bed bugs, I told him steadily. Lots of them. Stan's eyes lit up with understanding. For the man who undercut my prices and stole my clients? Consider it my pleasure. He handed me a container the next day. These multiply fast. He's about to regret cheating on you. I went home and packed everything I wanted to keep in my car. Then I methodically planted bed bugs everywhere I imagined Dave and his mistress had been. Our bed got the heaviest dose because the thought of them there made me sick. The couch where we used to watch movies, the guest room he'd been fixing up, even his precious home office where he probably texted her while I cooked dinner. If he wanted to screw around in my house, he could deal with the consequences. While I was planting the bugs in his office, I bumped his mouse and the screen lit up. It wasn't locked. I figured maybe I could find more proof of the affair, something solid for the divorce. So I opened his messages and searched for Jay. What popped up made my blood run cold. Jay wasn't a woman. It was Johnson, the 18-year-old boy who'd been Dave's favorite employee for the past 3 years. My hands trembled as I read their text exchanges with new understanding. Can't wait to see you tomorrow took on a sickening new meaning. The explicit photos Dave had sent to what he thought was a willing affair partner were actually sent to a teenage boy he'd been grooming. Those flirty responses I'd read weren't from some college temptress, but from a kid trying to keep his job. The money for college wasn't gold digging, but something much worse. I kept reading, unable to stop even as my stomach churned. Years of messages showing how Dave had groomed this kid starting when Johnson was barely 17. You looked good working shirtless today, worth the extra $200. The payments weren't bonuses, but hush money disguised as legitimate wages. $500 for attic inspection, $800 for special inventory, all carefully documented while Dave took this boy to empty houses, away from cameras and witnesses. But then I found out Johnson wasn't the only one. I found similar conversations with other boys who'd worked for Dave. The Martinez kid who'd quit suddenly last year, the Chen boy whose family moved away without explanation, 6 boys over 5 years, and most had similar message threads that started professional and gradually became predatory. Some had sent messages begging him to stop. Please, Mr. Dave, I just need this job for college money. Others simply stopped responding. 3 boys had vanished entirely with their families leaving town, in what I now understood wasn't coincidence but escape. My hands shook as I screenshotted everything on Dave's computer, the evidence piling up with each click. The coffee mug on his desk rattled against my elbow, and I watched in horror as it tumbled off the edge, shattering on the floor just as Dave's truck rumbled into the driveway. He was back early from the commercial job. I froze at his desk, the computer screen still showing Johnson's messages as Dave's footsteps echoed through the garage. The familiar sound of his work boots on concrete sent ice through my veins. His breathing filled the hallway, that same heavy rhythm I'd heard in the background of those recorded video calls with the boys. Dave appeared in the doorway, his face shifting from surprise to concern. He glanced at the broken mug, then at me standing behind his desk. I opened my mouth to scream the truth at him, to unleash 15 years of unknowing complicity in his crimes. But what came out was barely a whisper. The words caught in my throat, emerging as a pathetic murmur that made me sound unhinged rather than righteous. Dave's eyebrows furrowed with what looked like genuine confusion. He stepped closer, reaching out like he was approaching a spooked animal. His hand touched my shoulder and I flinched away, knocking more items off his desk. The doorbell rang, cutting through the tension. Sandra from next door stood on our porch, mascara streaking down her face. Her daughter Lily clung to her leg, sobbing about bugs in her room. Sandra's ex was coming for custody exchange in an hour, and she needed Dave to spray immediately. Her desperation was palpable as she begged for help, explaining how her ex would use any excuse to claim she was an unfit mother. I stood there, torn between confronting my husband and helping a desperate mother. Dave moved toward the door, already reaching for his equipment. In that moment, I made my choice. I brushed past Dave and took Sandra's hand, leading her and Lily to our kitchen while Dave headed to his truck for supplies. Behind me, I heard Dave's fingers flying across his phone keyboard. Through the window, I watched him pause at his truck, typing furiously. My own phone buzzed moments later, a message in our church group chat. Dave had posted about my mental health crisis and asked for prayers for my paranoid delusions. The responses flooded in immediately, hearts and prayer hand emojis from people I'd known for years. While I helped Sandra calm Lily down, my phone rang. Johnson's mother, asking why he hadn't shown up for work. Before I could answer, the doorbell rang again. Through the peephole, I saw a man in a suit holding papers, the Chen family's lawyer, and pulling up behind him was my sister's car for our planned lunch date. Everything was happening at once. My sister Janet burst through the door, took one look at my face, and immediately asked what was wrong. In the chaos of Sandra's crisis and the lawyer waiting outside, I pulled Janet into the bathroom and told her everything. The words tumbled out: Dave, the boys, the messages, the grooming. Janet's reaction hit me like a physical blow. Relief washed over her face as she exhaled deeply. At least it wasn't an affair with another woman, she said. said. Just some confusion with teenage boys who probably misunderstood Dave's mentoring. Her casual homophobia became Dave's perfect shield, as she rationalized away predatory behavior as preferable to adultery. The church group had arrived by the time we emerged from the bathroom. Dave stood in our living room, surrounded by concerned faces as he hyperventilated into a paper bag. His performance was flawless, the devoted husband terrified for his wife's mental state, confused by her sudden accusations. Elder Patterson rubbed Dave's back while his wife shot me suspicious glances. Through the crowd, I spotted Jake, our 16-year-old nephew who'd spent last summer working for Dave. His face was red with anger as he pushed through the church members to confront me. Dave had saved him, he insisted, given him purpose and direction when his own father wouldn't. How dare I try to destroy Uncle Dave with my jealousy over his success with the kids? My eyes caught something on Dave's desk through his open office door. Johnson's work phone sat there among the papers I'd disturbed, its screen lighting up with notifications. One preview made my heart stop. Please help me. But touching it would be theft. Taking it would make me look vindictive, desperate to manufacture evidence. Elder Patterson's wife had her phone out, and I realized too late she was posting in the community Facebook group. Within minutes, concerned citizens of Kearney lit up with posts about supporting Dave through his wife's episode. The narrative was already being written without me. The Little League board president called Dave's phone, needing financial records for a sponsor audit. Only Dave had the passwords, and when I refused to help him access them, I looked obstructive, protective of secrets that didn't exist. Dave handled the call with grace while I stood there, looking more unstable by the minute. Janet pulled me aside, whispering about my behavior. It was just like 2019, she said. Just like when our brother died and I'd spiraled into paranoia and accusations. The PTSD symptoms I'd worked so hard to overcome were now being weaponized against me. Dave helpfully mentioned my therapy history to the church group, producing printed notes from sessions he'd supported me through. My phone buzzed with screenshots. Dave had forwarded my frantic text to Johnson's mother to the neighborhood watch chat. My desperate attempts to find the truth were reframed as harassment of a minor. The concerned responses poured in. Parents worried about protecting their children from me, not Dave. 3 different families reported seeing me parked outside their homes over the past week. They didn't know I was trying to find the other boys Dave had mentioned in his messages, the ones who'd disappeared. To them, I was a disturbed woman stalking their children. Dave still controlled the business PayPal where Johnson's overtime payments were sent. As we stood there surrounded by concerned neighbors, I heard his phone ping with a notification. Another automated $500 payment to Johnson had just processed. Evidence of his crimes happening in real time while everyone comforted him about his troubled wife. I hadn't slept in 48 hours. The exhaustion hit me all at once, making my words slur as I tried to explain to Janet. She backed away, fear replacing concern. When I left to get air, I rear-ended a car at the school pickup line. Parents filmed me stumbling out, my exhaustion misread as intoxication. The videos were online within minutes. Melissa, my best friend since college, met me at the coffee shop. Her husband worked for Dave, she reminded me. They couldn't afford to lose that income, not with 3 kids and a mortgage. She believed something was wrong, she admitted, but her family's survival mattered more than my need for support. I was on my own. Walking home, I noticed neighbors crossing the street to avoid me. Mrs. Chen actually grabbed her daughter and hurried inside when she saw me approaching. Later, Janet showed me the Facebook thread. 847 comments on the Concerned Citizens page about protecting children from my dangerous behavior. The irony made me sick. Dave's lie about being at the supplier warehouse during one of his meetings with Johnson should have been easy to disprove, but traffic cameras showed he actually had stopped there after leaving Johnson. A perfect alibi created by pure coincidence, making my accusations seem even more desperate. My cousin Beth called, embarrassed but firm. Her son needed Dave's recommendation letter for the pest control apprenticeship program. She couldn't afford to take sides. Family bonds meant nothing compared to career opportunities. I tried to prove Dave had lied about Johnson's college fund by accessing the business accounts, but doing so revealed I'd hacked in without permission, making me look financially vindictive. Dave's attorney filed an emergency financial restraining order before I could download more evidence. When the divorce papers arrived, a moment of bitter relief crossed my face. The process server caught it on camera, evidence that I'd wanted the marriage to end, that all of this was just an elaborate scheme to get out of my marriage with maximum damage. Dave's final text that night was simple: drop this or I'll take everything. My response was equally clear. The boys deserve justice. We both understood that this would end with one of us completely destroyed. The battle lines were drawn, and I was already losing ground. The next morning brought Carol to my door, her book club tote bag clutched nervously in her hands. She explained that Dave had reached out to her, needing someone who understood what it was like to lose everything to false accusations. Her own ex-husband had made similar claims during their divorce. I watched her eyes soften as she described Dave's vulnerability, his tears over losing the woman he'd loved for 15 years. By the time she left, I knew they'd be dating within the week. Dave and I both appeared at the police station to give our statements about Johnson's employment. The detective listened to my account of grooming and abuse, then to Dave's version of mentoring a troubled teen whose father had been deported. We both passed our polygraph tests. Dave believed his lies so completely that his body showed no signs of deception. My truth sounded like paranoid delusion next to his calm certainty. Janet brought over a box of my old things from her garage, including emails I'd sent her 3 years ago. In them, I'd begged Dave to hire Jake despite his behavioral problems. I'd praised Dave's ability to connect with troubled boys, called him a miracle worker with teens. My own words now served as evidence that I'd always known about and encouraged Dave's relationships with young men. The 6-year-old from across the street approached me at the mailbox. She tilted her head and repeated what she'd heard at home, that Mrs. Dave was sick and needed medicine for her brain. Her innocent words carried the weight of community judgment. Even the children had been taught to see me as unstable. I discovered the empty house meetings weren't what I'd assumed. Ring doorbell footage from the Henderson property showed Johnson arriving alone, staying for hours. Dave's truck was nowhere in the recordings. My theory about forced encounters crumbled. Johnson had been using the empty houses for privacy, but not with Dave. Family court treated my accusations as a custody tactic. The judge ordered supervised visitation with our foster children, requiring a court-appointed monitor to observe my interactions. Dave graciously offered to cover the monitor's fees, cementing his image as the stable, generous parent. Late one night, I remembered Dave's cloud storage account. His passwords were still saved in our shared computer. I accessed years of deleted files before he realized the account existed. The browser history showed recent searches for permanent deletion methods. kids. He'd been covering his tracks but hadn't remembered every digital footprint. Johnson's Instagram told a different story than I'd expected. Designer shoes, gaming systems, and electronics appeared in his posts, all tagged with captions about grinding overtime and saving for college. The purchase dates aligned perfectly with Dave's payments, but the context suggested a hardworking kid, not a victim. My therapist received a subpoena for our session notes. Years of discussing my resentment over Dave's popularity, my jealousy of his easy relationships with teens, my frustration at being overlooked, all of it would be twisted into evidence of my motivations for false accusations. During a custody exchange at the community center, I tried to record Dave on my phone. He noticed immediately, calmly pointing out my behavior to the supervisor. My subsequent complaints through the mandated communication app looked retaliatory, especially when Dave responded with concern for my mental health. Dave volunteered to handle all school pickups for the foster children. Every afternoon, he chatted with teachers and other parents, solidifying his narrative as the stable caregiver dealing with an unstable ex. The school community rallied around him, offering support and prayers. Marcus, who'd worked at Dave's company for 2 years, pulled me aside at the grocery store. He'd seen things that concerned him, interactions that crossed lines, but an anonymous OSHA complaint had just threatened his pest control license. With 3 kids and child support payments, he couldn't risk testifying. He apologized and walked away quickly. I noticed Dave wearing a class ring on a chain around his neck, Johnson's ring. He'd moved back into our master bedroom, and when I retrieved some clothes during a supervised visit, I smelled his cologne mixed with Johnson's body spray on my old pillows. The violation made me physically sick. Dave's attorney sent a settlement offer. If I dropped all accusations and accepted a bipolar diagnosis, Dave would ensure I received proper treatment with his therapist friend. The foster children needed stability, the letter explained. My refusal to seek help was harming innocent kids. I realized I'd been wrong about the meeting locations. Security footage from multiple empty houses showed me sitting in my car for hours, watching nothing. The meetings had been in Dave's office all along. My stalking behavior at wrong addresses made me look deranged and dangerous. Johnson had been documenting everything, but not how I'd expected. His Minecraft server contained chat logs with friends, discussing his situation in what he thought was a private space. The conversations revealed a complex truth. He knew the relationship was inappropriate, but felt trapped by circumstances I hadn't understood. The payments I'd flagged as suspicious had explanations. Johnson's father had been deported the previous year. Dave's financial support helped the family avoid eviction. What I'd seen as hush money was documented as charitable assistance to an employee facing hardship. My mother arrived at Janet's house while I was there. She stood in the doorway, forced to choose between believing her daughter or maintaining access to her grandchildren. Dave now controlled visitation with the foster kids. Supporting me meant losing them. She chose carefully worded neutrality, limiting me to 1 family dinner per month where Dave had to be treated civilly. I began adopting Dave's tactics. I befriended Johnson's ex-girlfriend at her coffee shop job, expressing sympathy for her recent breakup. Through careful conversations, I gathered information about Johnson's home life, his fears, his family's financial struggles. I hated myself for manipulating a teenage girl, but I needed allies. A chance encounter at the community college wasn't chance at all. I'd memorized Johnson's class schedule and positioned myself in the cafeteria when I knew he'd be there. We made small talk about his courses while I noted every detail: his nervous habits, his new car, the way he flinched when older men walked too close. Dave's devices still synced to our old shared Apple account. Before he realized this vulnerability, I downloaded years of messages between his phone and tablet. The evidence was overwhelming, but obtaining it violated numerous privacy laws. Using it would destroy my credibility while proving my crimes. Johnson's father returned from Mexico with his own agenda. He blamed Dave for corrupting his son, bringing shame to their family. His cultural values clashed with American law enforcement's approach. Fighting both Dave and Johnson's father meant I was battling on 2 fronts, each undermining the other. The foster children's therapy appointment conflicted with meeting Johnson's father. I chose the investigation over the kids, arriving late to find the therapist gone, and a note in my file about negligent guardianship. Dave had been there on time, of course, earning praise for his dedication. My credit cards reached their limits, paying attorney fees. Dave used the business accounts for his legal team, writing off the expenses as company costs. I moved into Janet's basement while Dave posted photos from our family home, the foster children laughing at movie night, baking cookies in my kitchen, playing in my garden. The confrontation at Applebee's wasn't planned. Johnson worked there, and I'd gone to observe. But when Dave arrived with Carol and the foster children for dinner, something snapped. The scene I caused traumatized the teenage staff and earned me a lifetime ban. Dave comforted the frightened workers while Carol called the police. My receptionist job ended when Dave's lawyer served my workplace with discovery requests. The disruption to business, the questions about my mental state, the implications for the company's reputation, my boss had no choice. Carol's daughter started the following Monday, a final twist of the knife. My father's call came while I was packing my things at work. His voice broke as he begged me to stop destroying our family over jealousy. Dave's relationships with those boys were mentorship, nothing more. I was ruining my mother's health with this vendetta. His words echoed what everyone believed. I was the problem, not Dave. My investigation expanded beyond Dave's victims. I questioned the Little League coach about his interactions with boys, looking for patterns. My implications led to his suspension pending investigation. His daughter asked why her daddy couldn't coach anymore. His wife filed for divorce rather than be associated with scandal. I was destroying innocent lives. The guilt ate at me, but I couldn't stop. Each failure pushed me to dig deeper, ask more questions, hurt more people. I told myself it was for the greater good, but watching the coach's family crumble, I wondered if I'd become as destructive as Dave. Janet found me staring at evidence files one morning. She asked a simple question that shattered my certainty. What if the boys had simply misunderstood Dave's mentoring? What if teenage hormones and confusion had twisted innocent guidance into something sinister? I sat silent for a full minute, unable to answer. The public admission came during a community meeting about youth safety. To maintain any credibility about current accusations, I confessed to hacking Dave's accounts and planting bedbugs in our home. The gasps from the audience told me I'd crossed a line. Dave sat in the front row, head bowed, the picture of a long-suffering victim. Security footage from Dave's office revealed another painful truth. Johnson had repeatedly asked for schedule changes, claiming conflicts with school. I'd ignored these requests, insisting he maintain his hours. The videos showed a scared kid trying to avoid situations I'd forced him into. My negligence had enabled abuse I now fought to expose. Dave's attorney filed an emergency motion to advance the divorce trial. My escalating Escalating instability threatened the children's welfare, the motion claimed. My own lawyer was in Hawaii for his daughter's wedding. I faced the hearing alone, unprepared and overwhelmed. Through Johnson's ex-girlfriend, I learned about Dave's childhood. His father had been absent, his mother neglectful. An uncle had stepped in as a father figure, providing the guidance Dave craved. The patterns were textbook, abuse disguised as mentorship, generation after generation. Dave genuinely believed he was helping these boys become men. Understanding his motivations didn't excuse his actions, but it complicated my hatred. Dave wasn't a monster who enjoyed hurting children. He was a damaged man perpetuating cycles of abuse while believing himself a savior. The distinction mattered in court, where intention affected sentencing. I seduced Dave's attorney's paralegal. She was young, idealistic, and sympathetic to my cause. Over wine and carefully crafted vulnerability, I extracted information about Dave's legal strategy. The betrayal of my own values, using someone's attraction for gain, marked another step in my transformation. The woman who'd never lied, who'd prided herself on honesty, learned to manipulate with surgical precision. I matched Dave's tactics move for move, becoming someone I didn't recognize. My mother's plea to maintain dignity became another broken promise. Johnson's 12-year-old brother started appearing at the library where I spent my days. I helped him with homework, learned about his home life, gathered intelligence on family dynamics. Using a child as an information source violated every moral boundary I'd once held sacred. A small victory came when the business licensing board revoked Dave's access to company accounts pending investigation. But watching him cry at his mother's grave that afternoon hollowed out my triumph. We were both mourning losses. Him, his reputation, me, my integrity. The cemetery groundskeeper found us on opposite sides of the graveyard, two destroyed people grieving different deaths. 3 families testified about my harassment in Dave's defamation countersuit. Their accounts were damning. A disturbed woman stalking their children, making wild accusations, disrupting their lives. The truth of my motivations mattered less than the impact of my actions. Everything hinged on Johnson's cooperation. His father's shame, his mother's financial dependence on Dave's support, his own trauma, all worked against justice. I needed him to testify, but every pressure I applied pushed him further away. The boy who documented his abuse in Minecraft chats remained silent in real life. My past kindness became present leverage. I'd taught Jake to drive when Dave was too busy. Now the boy needed rides to work and school. Each trip became an opportunity to plant doubts about Uncle Dave, to highlight inconsistencies in stories. I manipulated a teenager's trust while telling myself it was for his protection. Local business owners faced economic choices. Dave's pest control company brought steady revenue through commercial contracts. Supporting me meant losing money. One by one, they chose financial stability over moral stands. The hardware store owner who'd known me for decades crossed the street to avoid conversation. The prosecutor explained legal reality during our third meeting. Grooming cases required victim testimony or physical evidence. Suspicious payments and deleted files weren't enough. Without Johnson's cooperation or concrete proof, criminal charges would fail. The system protected predators who chose their victims carefully. I called in old favors, including one from a state inspector who'd driven hammered 3 years ago. I'd helped him avoid arrest, and now I needed his help. His inspection of Dave's chemical storage found violations worth fines, but nothing that would shut down the business or prove abuse. Even corruption had its limits. The Minecraft chat logs revealed Johnson's heroism. He'd known the relationship was inappropriate, but stayed to protect his younger brother from becoming Dave's next target. Every degrading moment was calculated sacrifice. He'd been gathering evidence too, planning to report after his brother graduated and escaped Dave's reach. Johnson's USB drive contained recorded conversations. His phone had captured Dave's propositions, threats, and promises. The evidence I'd searched for desperately had been in Johnson's possession all along. 2 parallel investigations that never connected until too late. The recordings revealed Johnson's terror and calculation. He'd spent months documenting abuse while ensuring his brother's safety. Unable to leave without endangering family, he'd chosen protection over escape. His bravery surpassed every adult who'd failed him, including me. I committed to Johnson's plan, protecting his brother while building an irrefutable case. My methods had been wrong, but the goal remained righteous. Justice required accepting that Johnson's choices, not mine, would determine Dave's fate. Dave's own paperwork became his trap. His notarized statement swearing he'd never been alone with employees contradicted work schedules submitted to insurance companies. Business liability required detailed logs of employee locations. His meticulous record-keeping proved his perjury. I presented evidence to the prosecutor without satisfaction. My focus shifted from revenge to protection, ensuring current employees avoided Johnson's fate. Dave's recognition of his mistake showed in his face. His own documentation had created the proof I'd failed to find. Other families began connecting dots. Their sons' behavioral changes aligned with employment dates. Withdrawal, anxiety, sudden quitting, patterns emerged across years of Dave's mentorship. Parents who'd praised him now questioned every interaction, every moment of trust. The criminal investigation opened as family court prepared for our final custody hearing. 2 systems of justice would determine Dave's fate and our children's future. The community divided between those admitting suspicions and those maintaining Dave's innocence. Some neighbors apologized for their treatment of me. Others still crossed streets to avoid the crazy pest control lady. I attended survivor support groups, learning to rebuild trust while managing hypervigilance. Johnson thrived in college with therapy support, his testimony having freed him from years of silence. Dave served supervised probation with mandatory treatment, the court choosing rehabilitation over incarceration. The foster children showed healing and therapy, processing the trauma of divided loyalties and disrupted homes. Janet provided stable temporary custody, while I completed required counseling. The community implemented background checks and 2 adult policies that should have existed before tragedy struck. Justice proved imperfect but real.